Habitual behavior is the most fundamental aspect of human life. People tend to do whatever they have been doing. Like the physical inertia of motion and rest, there is the psychological inertia of habit. The longer a habit has been around and the deeper it is engraved, the more energy it takes to change. Beginning anything new always takes more effort than maintaining the same old thing. This concept forms the basis for such common sayings as the first step is the hardest, or the more pessimistic, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Our personalities, our lifestyles, the way we act, the way we dress, what we eat, the way people know us are largely collections of habits. The way we take care of our needs, both biological and psychological, is usually based on habits. If you suddenly acted in a dramatically different way or spoke, dressed, behaved in any unusual way, people around you would most certainly take notice. They might wonder what's going on. Even if your habits were once helpful, needs can change and old habits won't work well anymore. Maybe once you liked your job but now you are sick of it. One thing's for sure, it's a lot easier to stick with the old habit of going into the office each day than finding something new. Something new involves risk. You might like your new job even less. Your next boss may be even worse. At least if you stay the same, you know what you've got. It may stink, but at least it is familiar. But for the recovering addicts, there is no staying the same. The addict has many habits and memories that has to be changed, and believe me, it's a full-time job. Change is frightening. It stirs things up and, while we are changing, we are unstable, up in the air, confused, stressed out and feel very ashamed. For the addict to change, he has to bring back the past. The addict's past is scary. Change with its destruction of the old is the giving up of an old life and the going on to something that once was there. Looking at the past for the addict is frightening because we might discover many things we just don't want to know. Changing habits, once they have been targeted, once you've decided to get rid of some of the same old ways of doing things, is a lot of effort. If you don't look, you can avoid the pain associated with the past for the moment. But, again, if you don't look, your past will always be around to haunt you, and hurt you, so is it really worth not looking at the past to learn how to eliminate the pain from the past? Whether you give yourself permission to be free depends on what you believe. How you live is your choice, but so many follow the usual rut when they could have the fulfillment of the exceptional. In other words, stay drug-free, or go back and use again, the choice is yours to make. It's a humble fact, you cannot recover unless you change your addiction thinking and habits. Now let's go on to part 8, and Ernie Larson, and the nature of habits. But before you get into part 8, stop the video and write down on paper, involuntary, repetition, habit. That's all for now. Keep saying these words over and over in your mind. If you need to get out a dictionary, do it. Look up the definition of each word. Part 8, Elton here again. Now let's take a good look at habits. Skills behind conditioned habits. Insight from Ernie Larson, Stage 2, Recovery Cassette Series. Those nasty habits. 1. Bad habits create bad consequences. 2. Whatever we do, however we feel, the way we act, if performed often enough becomes a habit. 3. Habits are rooted in our subconscious mind as learned survival techniques. 4. Habits are systems of thoughts, feelings, along with actions. 5. Habits dictate what is normal everyday routine. 6. Habits are living things and they will fight you to the end. Now, let's take each one and go over it in detail. Remember, habits are skills and they alone affect the reality of life and living. Keep in mind that habit is formed by conditioning responses. 1. Bad habits create bad consequences. Most of what we do, feel, and say is the direct result of learned habit, not choice. What we do, say, and feel is programmed in our subconscious mind, and once this program is encoded as a learned survival technique, it becomes a well-guarded function known as a habit. Bad habits are created while under the influence of your drug of choice, and we don't even realize we are forming them. This is why the drug addict follows such a set lifestyle pattern. The behavior pattern is the sole property of the individual, created by the individual, and acted out by the individual. In reference to the drug addict, these habitual behaviors become their normal way of functioning. Good positive habits create good standards of living, and bad negative habits create bad consequences that give birth to the fundamental characteristics of the addictive lifestyle. The despair and hopeless feelings are practiced so much by the addict, that in time they know of no other way to feel. In other words, we actually practice becoming an alcoholic or drug addict. We make it a habit to cover up the pain with chemical substances, such as with the use of psychoactive drugs. As a result of habit, we have learned that drugs do work, because they do what they are chemically programmed to do. Therefore, we learn to use all the negative byproducts resulting out of the controlling habits associated with addiction in our daily routine. Just stop for 1 minute and think about it. Do you really stop and think about everything you do or say? Have you ever said to yourself, "Why did I do that, or say that? I didn't mean what I said, or I don't know why I acted out the way I did"? 2. Whatever we do, say, or feel often enough, becomes a learned habit. We do not consciously program a habit, just the fact of doing, feeling, thinking it over and over, with repetition and practice, we create the habit automatically. Repetition is the creator of habit, and once it becomes a programmed habit, it controls your destiny. Drug addicts just don't fall out of trees, nor do codependents, they have been practicing on a regular basis most of their life. Larson, E., Bradshaw, J. Our subconscious mind does not know the distinction between good or bad, right from wrong. Just like emotions are neither good or bad, right or wrong, it's how you process and feel the emotion that determines the fate of it. In other words, every time you get angry, do you always follow the same raging pattern? Adult children time after time hide their feelings, as well as addicts time after time use drugs to hide their painful feelings. Whatever you do, and do it often enough in repetition, will become a well-guarded programmed habit that you are stuck with until a change can be made. On occasion, I've had someone come up to me and clearly bellow out, "I just don't understand how anyone can become a drug addict. Why do people allow themselves to get into such a situation?" And of course I have my little story up my sleeve, and I look them straight in the face. "I take it you have never been there, and you have absolutely no idea what it's like being an addict." Their reply, "But what does that have to do with becoming addicted?" I replied by stating, "People don't know they are getting addicted at first." "Do you grow old?" I asked. The reply, "Everybody gets old eventually, this is human nature, but what does that have to do with becoming addicted?" I tried to explain that progression to addiction is something like growing old. Day after day, year after year, as each day and each year goes by we get older, and the process is so slow that we just don't realize we are getting older. Day after day, one takes a drink, then it's a few more drinks, then it's continuous drinking, and just like age progression, addiction occurs just about in the same manner. You just don't realize you are becoming addicted, just like you don't realize you are becoming an old crab. All of you think about it, the recovering ex-alcoholics, if you knew after your first drink, that one day you will become addicted, would you have started the drinking on a regular basis if you had the knowledge of how habits are programmed? This question in particular, I can never get a straight answer out of anybody. Take this thought and simply think about it for a while. Once a habit is securely rooted as a conditioned response, it will be obeyed because it has the power to run and rule your life. It's a silent commander that motivates you through many different life functions, and because habits are rooted in the unconscious, they go basically undetected. Conditioned habits do indeed have power of attorney. 3. Habits are rooted in our subconscious mind. This chemical intelligence I've been throwing at you thus far through this profile, what is the main purpose for its existence? Your subconscious mind will not make any choice of any feelings, thoughts, or actions, because these are habits programmed and they are guarded well. When a person creates the habit of abusing drugs to change their mood, repetition of using creates a programmed pattern that the guardian, the brain, your mind, takes as normal behavior. In time, it becomes normal for you to get high, alter your mood, behave the way you do, feel the way you feel, simply because you make it an everyday normal function that is securely rooted in your comfort zone. Your pattern of addicted behavior that is associated with chronic addiction, sets you out as an outcast from the rest of society. Over time you learned it just like you learned all your other vital functions associated with life and living. I've had some addicts come up to me and scream in my face telling me I don't let anybody or anything control me, but yet their wife has left them, they're sweating buckets, and look like 50 miles of bad road but nothing controls them. Here's just a few examples of what the addict makes a programmed habit. 1. Changing your mood, every chance you got. 2. Lying and cheating, every chance you get. 3. Becoming very self-centered, selfish, extremely obnoxious. 4. Using other people, every chance you thought you could get a drink or a drug out of them, manipulator, con artist. 5. Getting angry, feeling guilty, being ashamed, very grandiose, always depressed, defending your addiction, programmed denial, aggression, and rage. 6. Thinking only of yourself, only concerned with your addiction. 7. Loneliness, isolation, boredom, hiding. 8. Feeling of hopelessness, feeling of despair, poor me, pity party, you just don't give a damn. 9. Doing, feeling, saying, and thinking that comes automatic. 10. Using psychoactive drugs to eliminate pain and suffering, as with withdrawal symptoms. Do they all sound like old friends to you? All of these learned behaviors, etc., you should be very good friends with. If you were anything like myself, you practiced them every day, and you made habits out of all of them. There's no other easy way I can explain it to you. Habits are extremely easy to make, but they are hell to get rid of because you have to deliberately make the effort to change the habit. It takes very little effort to make a habit. Eventually, much of your deviant behavior became such a routine by constant repetition and practice, that you conducted yourself automatically just like that addicted person defined by society. 4. Habits are systems of thoughts, feelings, and actions. Our mind always moves towards its most predominant thought, and most of the thoughts in our mind are habitual. Habits are thoughts and feelings, along with the appropriate action, and they all work together. Try starting your day by telling yourself, well, I'm not going to drink today. The first bar, or gin mill you come across, guess what happens, and especially if it's your favorite watering hole. An uncontrollable urge seems to force you into the parking lot, out of your car, through the door, straight to a bar stool, and without thinking, you order a drink. You may have had sincere intentions of really not drinking today, but good old king habit, your dependable friend led you straight to your favorite place, and demanded you to get drunk. And if you think about it, you never had any real control over what happened, same old stuff, day after day, year after year, nothing ever changes. If you are a recovering alcoholic, you know right well you're not going to settle with just one drink. Until the day comes when change is forced upon you, by no choice of your own, or they put you in a place to where you can't get to your drug. If you're out of commission long enough for the habit to weaken, possibly in time, you will learn how to change thought processes. The powerful hold of the habit may be weakened enough for you to make a change without any real difficulty. This is called abstinence, on the wagon, whatever, and it's only a small part of your behavioral change that has to take place. Eliminating the physical abnormality of drug addiction is nothing compared to the psychological aspects that you must tackle head-on to maintain a drug-free lifestyle. And attacking the psychological aspects of your addiction is World War I, II, and III, and number 3 is the one you're going to go through, dealing with the psychology of addiction. This direct assault you will undertake upon the psychology of addiction must deal with your affective disorders associated with chronic use and abuse of your drug. In short, not only is your behavior at question, but all the underlying issues dealing with emotions, thought processes, and primarily your overall feelings. Stage 1 recovery efforts is a sufficient start on the recovery path. In Stage 1, addicts learn to stand on their own 2 feet by just not drinking or using. Stage 2, they learn what it's going to take to plant the foundation, and Stage 3, they learn how to stand on their feet and walk through life drug-free. In Stage 1 recovery, the purpose behind or the foundation setting for this particular stage is basically accomplished through AA, or any other self-help organization such as NA, EA, CA, and so on. I say that because if you were in an inpatient rehab, there's no way you're going to get out of going to AA. The purpose of Stage 1 recovery is what you will basically hear in AA, which is just don't drink today. This takes care primarily of the physical aspects of addiction. If you don't pick up a drink or use today, you won't get drunk or high. And if you don't get drunk or high, and the painful withdrawal is worked through successfully, in time you will start to feel somewhat like a different person. Detoxification from your drug is just a very small part of the work you have to do. Anyone can basically detox him or herself, for which includes the basic function of just not drinking or using. The focus of Stage 2 is to clearly identify yourself as an addict. Your emotions and feelings, such as depression, guilt, shame, self-esteem, self-worth, and so on, are discovered in Stage 1. The self-talk that constantly flows through our mind is done out of habit. The mind always moves towards its most predominant thought, which, if it's easier for you to understand, always moves to satisfy direct patterned programming. Earlier in the profile I said self-talk is a good habit to get involved with, but you have to make sure you're strong enough so that your self-talk won't lead you right back to your drugs. Think about it, people. Is there anyone that will not admit that their drug was not extremely pleasant, and extremely rewarding? And so rewarding that you constantly sought out the drug just for pleasurable reasons. Let's be real about the situation. As long as you were high, you were not feeling any pain, or uncomfortable in any way. We don't want to hurt. Feeling good is much better, more pleasant, and it was always the programmed way out of any disturbing situation. The real truth of the matter is, it did not matter how you got there because your chemical programming demanded more of the drug. Under the influence of the drug was a whole new different world to deal with, and the addict knows how to deal with the programmed mindset. In respect to some alcoholics, getting drunk was just the thing to do, and feeling the high from the alcohol was really not that important. What's important was to drink until you reached your tolerant level, or you passed out, or just got so sick that drinking had to stop. When the drinking finally stopped, the shaking from withdrawal was a signal to start drinking again. You are the caretaker of your own feelings. The main purpose for taking the drug was not to feel the feelings, not to hurt, physically or psychologically, and you did it without having to think about it. The addict simply deals with the bad feelings for a while, but as all drunks know, drinking had to start again. And each time we re-experienced the pain, it seemed like it got more intense the next time around. Come to realize in early recovery that it's the pain that is the motivating factor in continued drug use after a successful detoxification, which is basically all psychological, intellectual. The psychology of addiction is the mental war you fight with early abstinence. And believe me, I know firsthand, just how uncomfortable and painful it can be. 5. Habit dictates what is normal, norm. We must distinguish here between what is normal and what is abnormal in order to understand how habits dictate what is normal. That's a tongue twister. How do we judge what is normal and what is not normal? This is where Dr. Dyer comes in handy. Review in your mind what you are trying to do, then, examine the right and wrong approach in relationship to becoming connected with a clean society. A word of caution to the early attempting recovering addict: if you are going to try and search your mind for an analysis of what is normal, forget it, you won't find it there, you haven't reprogrammed it yet. If you are searching for what society dictates is normal, forget it, you won't find it there either. Time will tell you and let you know just how normal you appear to others. The feedback from others will give you some insight to just what is normal, or what it's supposed to be. When you start fitting in and when it appears that you can get along in your world, without a drug for support, then, and only then will you see, or sense what is normal. And this sense of normal will not be a reflection from another, but a total innermost reconstruction of your immediate feelings towards life itself. You will see the world the way it is, and not by the way you feel. After all, it was your own innermost painful feelings that got you addicted in the first place. You didn't like the hurt feeling, so you covered up the feeling with alcohol and other drugs, only to find that the feelings always returned. Remember, Stage 1 recovery is focusing on the past, the reason you are in recovery today, and Stage 1 recovery must focus on the why and must focus on your family of origin, and or other reasons why. For what reason, or what caused so much pain, that the need to cover it up with a drug became so important. Stage 2 is clearly identifying yourself to society as an addict, and Stage 3 is working out a plan of action to overcome and change your personality resulting from being addicted. Later, when I get into the QHI recovery system, this focus will become clearer. Your very past will become your best tool for attempting recovery and understanding yourself. Whatever comes automatic to you in the way of thinking, feeling, and behaving is considered to be done, felt, and acted out as programmed in your comfort zone. Norm in this case means, you have done it so often it became an automatic response to think, feel, and behave in a certain personal manner. When you down a case of beer, or swallow a handful of pills each chance you got, in time, because of repetition and practice, it became just as much a part of your life and living as eating to survive. Take smoking for example. It's one of the hardest addictions to overcome because of its so many different programmed behavior habits. Another example, let's wander away from the chronic addicted for a moment and think about it in this way. Suppose you're not addicted to any hard, cocaine, heroin, etc., psychoactive substance, and all you do is get up in the morning and run straight for the coffee pot. Now let's suppose you have done this for years, and one day you're running late and don't get your fill of coffee before leaving the house. Can any of you relate to this? You're on the way to work and for some reason, you feel like something just not right. Not only did you miss your daily morning psychostimulant, but you wandered away from your morning routine of consuming your coffee. What you did was not of your normal routine, and you feel something is terribly wrong, until you get to work and have that first cup of coffee, which you desire the feeling from caffeine. When you wander away from your routine, you're thinking unconsciously something is just not right, and until you make it right, you just don't feel right. Habits are going to find a way to create the results they were formed to cause. Alcoholics are going to find a way to drink, pill pushers are going to find some pills to swallow, and recovering people are going to find and search for every reason not to give up their drugs. Most of our learned habits, we are not even aware they exist, simply because they are so automatic. We don't even have to think about them, they just happen all by their little old self. When you wander away from your daily routine, you are probably going to unconsciously worry about it until you fix the situation. You may even grieve unconsciously over the situation you are encountering. 6. Habits are living things. Brain chemical intelligence, like all living things that possess a intelligence, habits will fight to their death to stay alive because they do, indeed, have intelligence. This is why recovery is so difficult at times and so slow. Habits are going to fight to stay alive simply because they are programmed survival tactics. The most terrifying thing about habit is the fact that you believe your feelings, thoughts, and actions are completely normal. You just see absolutely nothing wrong with what you are doing or feeling, and because it feels so right, you just never give it any thought that just maybe, it might be out of order in reference to societal norms. How many times have you expressed the fact that, this is the way I am, and if you don't like it, that's too bad? The creative subconscious part of your brain, its job is to protect what is normal, it is to preserve predictability. The subconscious mind is not the enemy, it is blind, and makes no choice of what is good or bad and right from wrong. As soon as a habit becomes a learned habitual function, by way of conditioning in your daily routine, whatever that learned function is, it will fight to protect itself. When we get involved in a program of change, these habits are what we have to change. It's a very difficult job, and in many cases just too hard for the individual to try and tackle on his own. But you can tackle the nature of habit, on your own, if you know how to go about doing it. We are creatures of habit. Remember, everything's controlled by the brain, therefore, as you think, so shall you be. And it will always turn out that way. If you think about relapsing, you will relapse and you will do it all by yourself. Ernie Larson and a host of other authors have many videos on YouTube. I suggest watching a few of them, they are all great spiritual teachers. Don't ever think habits are easy to break or change, they're not, and they will fight you until the end. Now if you wish to continue, let's go on to part 9.